Okay, we are live. I like that 30-second countdown. It really gets you ready. We're joined by two absolute generative art maestros on Bitcoin who have been creating generative art before inscriptions or ordinals were possible as well. So we're going to really dig into that. In Pawel, Dudko and Andrea Belloni, we're also going to be joined by RalenArc, who just sold out her collection whilst I was asleep. It's good morning in Australia. It's quite late. It's late night for our lovely European guests here. But enough from me. Pawel and Andrea, maybe we'll go Pawel and then Andrea just to keep things orderly. But I know that probably everybody knows who you are, but give everyone a bit of an introduction, say hello, talk to people about who you are if they don't know and what you create. Yeah, go for it. And thanks so much for being here. I can't wait to dig into generative art with you guys.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Brad. It's very nice to be here. So I'm an algorithmic artist who is exploring generative and algorithmic art. I started about 2015 to dig into generative art. Well, surprisingly, it was with generative 3D printed sculptures, not the visual stuff that I'm focused on now. And around 2020, when we were locked up, I started pursuing more visual approach to generative art. I learned about art blocks. I learned about NFTs or generative art NFTs, basically. And it just clicked. It was absolutely remarkable, something that I've always missed. And well, in 2023, I released my first collections on ordinals, and here we are 2 years later, nearly.
I know time has really flown. I can't believe that. It was funny seeing the post the other day saying, "Happy second birthday to ordinals." And I thought, wow, it's been time. Time's a funny thing. It's gone quickly, but it's also gone slowly at the same time because time in crypto, it's a bit of a cliche. Feels like 2 weeks can be 2 months in the real world in terms of how quickly things happen. But yeah, welcome, Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Belloni, and I'm really happy to be here with you. Thanks, Brett. And I could say I started to do something that could be called generative art many years ago, when generative art is not even a word, because as you can see, I'm not so young. And in the 80s, I had my home computer, and the first thing that I learned to program was something that has some visual output. I was always fascinated by the possibility to write programs that displays mathematical surfaces, because the other things that is important in my formation is that also if I have a scientific background, not artistic background, but I was always interested in the interplay between science and art. And so, long story short, I continued to do this kind of program to display mainly 3D graphics, animation with different language, different frameworks, etc. Till I discovered in I think yes, in 2021, FXH, and when I see, I thought this is what is for me, the possibility to write. To do the same thing I always done, but to let the other see what I do. I was so sure that other could like what I do. So the only way to know this is to release something public. So first I think Sash, a little bit on Ethereum, and start of 2023, more or less same time that with Pawel, I released my first collection on ordinals named Plastica, and in this occasion. Just before this, I started to learn to program GLSL, to program shader language, to have the possibility to do really compact code. That is a really important thing when you release something as ordinals. Especially at the beginning, when you don't always have the possibility to use recursive description, a big library, etc. So the first was a single compact code in shader language, and I'm continuing to study. I feel that that kind of programming is my favorite way of expression of express myself. Because I also the things that so little code can produce so much complexity. Is for me is important. Also for my study related to a complex system, chaos theory, etc. Where you when you have something like, for example, cellular automata, in which you have really simple rules, really simple local rules that generate a vast amount of complexity. This is something that I really like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, sorry, go on.
Okay. More or less is this the going forward. We say other things about this, I think.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. Really brilliant introductions. We've been joined by a couple of generative artists who have popped in to say hello. Say hello to Akira, who just dropped a collection on Gamma as well. And the same as Air Ducks. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, it's great. You feel free if you're watching. We're joined by over 200-ish people right now, which is fantastic. Feel free to say hello. Share a comment, ask a question if you've got one, if you're in the audience. So guys, it's really interesting. Pawel, you said you came from more of an engineering 3D object sculpture type background into creative coding. And Andrea, yours came from more I guess you said, the scientific side. And you can see that come through a little bit in what you create, but when did you first realize that you could create computer generated art? Because computer generated art is quite old. It's a lot older than a lot of people realize. And then, yeah, in terms of that transition, when you both found generative art on other chains, and then obviously now it's available and able to be inscribed onto Bitcoin, how has that journey evolved for both of you? So again, maybe we'll just, to keep things orderly, Pawel and then Andrea, but if you've got questions for each other or you want to chime in for each other, please do. It doesn't have to be purely an interview Q&A.
Awesome. I mean, I really like this two of us finally meeting together online, because I have a huge respect and huge admiration for Andrea. And I think this is a really nice example, actually, how our backgrounds affect our art, affect what we do. I let Andrea talk about his scientific background, because I know like just a tiny pinch of it. But my background was initially, like my first loved kind of art was photography. And I worked a lot with photography, I worked a lot with compositing, then video editing, etc., etc. Also 3D graphics. So you can see a lot of it in my artworks, that they are built with layers, with different tools, with different processes. That's also why I really enjoy animated pieces, because, well, it's digital art. You can utilize it. It doesn't have to be printed. I mean, usually generative art is just open to. It should render on any kind of screen, any size of screen that you allow it to. So, well, why not animation, right? Why not make it moving, since it will be on screen anyway? So yeah, that's basically how I'm utilizing my background in the art. But when it started, well, for me it started pretty late, because I graduated in architecture, and then I decided that I don't want to pursue that career. I stayed at the university as a teacher, lecturer, and I started digging into this 3D printing for artistic purposes, right? I could model some objects, but after some time, actually it felt pretty boring, because you're doing something on one machine, and the second machine next to it is printing it. And then at one moment I realized, what am I necessary, right? I questioned myself, am I necessary? What if we remove me from the equation? Like, there are two machines, let them communicate, let them talk to each other, and let them figure out something. Okay, and that was too early. We didn't have AI yet, or my skills weren't good enough. However, I then decided to write algorithms that could randomly generate objects, randomly generate sculptures. So there are a few sculptures that are generative, so they are based on algorithms. And well, later on, I moved even further, that I removed the code entirely. I mean, as much as it could be removed. So basically, then there were only physical elements, a little bit of inconsistencies in material, in gear, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, for me, generative art, or this kind of relying on different sets of rules or structure, is just something that I really like to pursue. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, no, for sure. And hello to Fernando, who's another generative artist. We're joined by lots of creative coders in the audience, so thanks for joining us, Fernando, and yeah, appreciate it. And same here. I you know, before we continue, I've written it in the comment, you know, sitting with two maestros, but you two really are two generative artists I feel very honored and lucky to work with at Gamma, and Pawel as an artist ambassador and partner artist, and Andrea as a partner artist as well. So it's, you know, this is a big honor, and thanks so much for taking time out of your late evenings to join us. So yeah, Andrea, similar question. Obviously, you know, like you leading up to finding the ability to create using FX hash, and then on ETH, and then coming into Bitcoin, how has that journey been from you? And you know, were you aware of computer generated art before that, and were you creating just for fun? You said then you wanted people to see what you were doing, and then you moved, like you said, to GLSL and shaderism. So yeah, I'm curious on that little journey too. Yeah.
Can you reformulate the question?
Yeah, so tell us, sorry. I realize that I spoke a little quickly.
You speak a little bit quick for me. Sorry.
So tell us about the journey into producing computer-generated art that people then see, and then across the different chains, compared to beforehand where you were just doing things for yourself.
Okay. Obviously the most important things related to passing from one blockchain to another, especially from Tezos to blockchain. The most important thing the one thing is the fact that all we release on ordinals on Bitcoin is inscribed on the blockchain, so it remains. And as I said before, this was initially was the reason for I learned to program in GLSL to have some more compact. But when I learned to program GLSL, I feel that that was the right way of expression for me, especially said Pawel, for the possibility to have a really smooth animation. I really like, as in my name and as in my name on Twitter and in most of the name of my works, there is this concept of flowing, something that flow smooth, that represents the fact that all is continuously changing. Whatever we do, this is what happened. And so I passed this, different. Maybe this is for the same things that I said before, that I am not an artistic background. I released works of different kind, we can say different style. Maybe in the last period, after I started to release on Bitcoin, this style is becoming to forming. But the first works I passed from abstract to landscapes, tree, again to abstract. It was this was an exploration of the possibility, also to pat myself at my limits. I am able to do this. I nominated landscapes. I remember when I released I work about landscapes on FXH, and with for what I can say really realistic tree with branching. I studied a particular algorithm that permits to generate a tree in the similar way of the real tree, in which the real tree grows. That was really one of the things that I like. It was, as I said before, the fact that at the start I was not able at all to do that thing, but in this path I arrived at the finished works that I like also now. Some day ago, I was thinking about work again on that kind of on that algorithm, maybe adding something, modifying, and maybe it could be another release on S ordinance. That was on using EPFS on FXH, but it was written in 3JS, and 3JS is always on ordinals. I can use by recursion. No? So who knows that maybe I return to some figurative works.
Yeah, that will be really interesting. I guess like a bit of a stylistic change for you. Before we dive into that, because I want to ask you both, and now Ralen, a question about that as well. We're joined by RalenArc. Welcome, Ralen. It was such a pleasure to meet you and your daughter in Miami. You just sold out your collection brick chain this morning, and you were also part of our Winter Pass airdrop with the Orbits collection, putting out stunning work. And then before that, Matrix. So you've done 3 really interesting collections on Bitcoin now. But for everyone who doesn't know you, we at the very start we did a bit of an introduction on who we are and where we came from and how we ended up creating on Bitcoin. Welcome to the live stream, RalenArc.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I was a little late.
That's okay.
Actually, I'm based in USA, and my art journey started with like physicals. So I'm making art like from childhood, but as like professionally, I started like 17 years before. So making with different mediums like clay art, murals, paintings. I love exploring different mediums, so that's why I keep exploring. Like, okay, now this is okay. I learned this. Now, what to do next? What to learn next? So yeah, and in NFT space, I came like 2021. That time I released my first generative art on Foundation. And then I released with art blocks. I got to know about art blocks and I fill out the applications and then I was working with them. So yeah, art blocks, then Bright Movements, Sotheby's, and then Gamma. So like how I started my generative art.
Yeah, you've done a lot. How the Pawel and Andrea both mentioned, I guess, their backgrounds that almost, I don't know, guided their path. What guided your path into creating generative art? You said you've created, in other ways and physically, using multimedia and whatnot. But yeah, how did you learn to code, and then what stimulated that path for you?
So actually, I knew coding before, but I feel like generative art is more about the creativity, how you compose your different elements, and how you're making the art with the textures using different geometry shapes, and also kind of like it's kind of sometime I would say generative art is very I'm just thinking what to say. I'm sorry, I'm in deep I feel like it's very creative based. Like sometime like few lines of code will amaze you with the artwork, like oh my god, this is amazing. So and I because my physical art experiences, so I would say like it's very easy for me to make the composition. Like for in my physical art also I make like different mediums art. So there also I before start I think, okay, what will be my composition, what kind of color I will choose. So in the same way, like in generative art, I before start, I take inspiration, I make the sketch, and then I start working on that. So yeah, this is my process.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a nice segue into where I wanted to head anyway. I laughed that probably my level of creative coding started and ended with a program I used in primary school called Turtle, where you'd program it to draw shapes. And I think that's that's a good introduction, though. I think for primary school students, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. That's aging all of us a little bit, but Turtle was an old program. But yeah, when you are creating, and then we might just to, like I said before, Ralen, just so you feel free to like ask the other guys questions as well. Otherwise, we can sort of keep it orderly so we don't interrupt each other. So we might go like Pawel and Andrea, and then yourself. I'm curious, when you have an idea, like is it extremely intentional, or does it start as experimental, or is there a mix of both when you're creating? And then feel free to comment on the different possibilities regarding the libraries, because I know obviously 3JS and P5JS and then GLS, there are different code bases that you can use to create in different ways. Do you go in with I'm going to create like this, so I need this, or is it a bit more of a journey? So we might go Pawel we'll go Pawel, Andrea, and then Ralen, just to keep it in order. Is that? I think that'll work. But if you then want to piggyback onto anything that anyone said, we can chime in. It doesn't have to be so structured.
No, it's okay.
Well, that's a very interesting question, especially that I very often say that I absolutely love code bashing. So I like to take either my old code or some sketches or some rough ideas and then play with it and just, I don't know, look for changing something. I think even in the document that I sent you recently, there was a one point like turn everything into a variable, like whatever is given as something that we can't question, just question it, right? It was also actually one of the prompts for January. So January, for those of you who might not know, is a month for generative art, where every day is a different prompt that artists, creators, creative coders can just come up with some artwork or some experiment to contribute. And well, there was this one prompt that said, what if pi was 4, or just pi equals 4, something like this. And there were some really interesting outputs, some that were really amazing. I actually took a little bit of time and ran through my old code and check what happens. Actually, nothing special in my case. Nothing extraordinary. But yeah, this is like this is what I like to do to get some inspiration, to just play with things, question everything. I don't know, you have positive number, go with negative, divide everything, multiply by a large number, change everything. And usually it ends in some kind of tragedy that you don't want to show to anyone. But once in a million, you see something that just amazes you, and well, and then you can keep building on it, keep exploring this path. So for me, like this thing I said about code bashing is absolutely maybe not crucial, but is like the seeking for inspiration. Yeah.
Brett, you're muted.
Yeah.
I muted myself to be polite and then didn't unmute. Do you then code bash, as you call it, and then test and look at it and curate and think, I like that, I'm going to leave it like that? Is it sort of like experiment, curate in that kind of process?
Yes, pretty much, yes. So usually it's like this code bashing is just playing with algorithm, just as a artistic, creative research, let's call it this way, right? Or sometimes, it's a good metaphor, like an artist, a painter with a blank canvas, right? You don't know where to start. And I actually don't like to start with a blank document, no code. So I like to start with something, even like put a dot there, right? And I can build on top of it, I can develop it. I don't like to make this first move. So yeah, this code bashing just is this this process that gives me the inspiration, and then I curate, and sometimes it goes to a degree that I create something, create a project, and well, then it's kind of stuck because again, I don't have any more ideas. So I was amazed by this very short, very brief impression of something that I saw, but then I don't know how to develop it, so I put it aside. I come back to it later on, and sometimes with this code bashing or just experimenting, new things come up, and some meanings are built, and some connections are made. So yeah, for me, it's all a process.
Yeah, Andrea, is it similar for you, or is your process a little bit different to Pawel?
Really similar. I rarely start from a blank document, begin to write. I have, in the CR, I have folder and subfolder and subfolder and files of with cryptic names. Me too. I have difficult to know what I really I have, and I start from something old. I mix. I take some code from here, some code from there, and then, as Pawel said, you start to when you see. You start to change values at variables. No, I don't say random. You have random is something random. It's more like a definition of a stochastic process. Stochastic process is like the arrow on it is something that is not deterministic. You have rows of points, but you know that you are going in that direction, but not in the straight line, but you explore what is also on the left, on the right, like a metaphor. And in this on code mean this, you change some value here, some value there, and you see it is continuous feedback from what you change, what you see. In the moment in which you see something that really speak to you, how can I say, you know that is so at that point you start to make a more fine adjustment, because you feel that you are in the right way. So yes, it's a, as Paul said, continuous code bashing. Yes, and then I want to say something similar to what I said before relative to code. This fact that with a little code you have a big complexity of what you what come from this code. For me, it's important. Because it's related to something important in information theory. On algorithmic information theory, the content, the information content of anything, because also of an image, video, it is the smallest program that can replicate that image, that video. It's a theoretical definition, and I like a lot when something that is formulated by a mathematician. This is something that comes from 1940, from the start of information study by Claude Shannon. When something so hard, so important, you understand that this is something that's an application what you do. for me, it is something that resonates in me strongly. I don't know if I
No, you did. I think that's
enough about this.
No, I think you expressed that really well. It's interesting just to hear the thought process through whilst you're creating, because we get to see these beautiful outputs as collectors or just viewers, and whether, you know, maybe perhaps one can read the code or not, but to hear about how it starts and the journey through to that point. And we'll even talk about some of the work more specifically. It's really interesting stuff. Ralen, what about for yourself when you're envisioning a project? Do you have a direction in mind from the start, and do you, like, obviously the coding knowledge to be like, I can execute on it this way, or does it ebb and flow a little bit before you get to that final product?
So for me, actually, I have a starting point, like where to start, and then like for my inspirations, I start with, and then but after that, like, yeah, I do a lot of experiment and like adding so many things, removing so many things, and using new techniques, like what different type of techniques I can try, or different type of texture I can try on that. So yeah, like the similar, but I have the starting point where to start and where to go.
And do you find throughout the process that you still, like you said, you have that starting point? Is it a specific coding knowledge and how to execute that output that you go with, or does it move on from there?
No, like more than like what is my inspiration? Let's say like today I released one project. It was about the blocks, how the blocks they are connected. Like so the idea already I have in mind what I'm going to create with the blocks. So the inspiration of this this project was like to connect and kind of building on upon each other. So like from the simplicity of the building blocks and the flowing movement of the blockchain. So the each artwork is like kind of in this collection, like creating a structure in a unique way. So that was that was my idea. So that's why I put the name Brickchain, and it's reflect the idea of connection. So that's that like how I take my inspiration, and then I like how I go further.
Sorry, my dog is barking at me. He wants to come into the office. So I'm going to ask a question, then jump up and let him come in so he stops barking. And then, yeah, no, that's interesting. And then Pawel, to add on to that, and I asked before, I know you jumped into code bashing. Talk to me about the different coding languages, and do you have a particular favorite that you use? Have you learnt quite a few? How do you sort of like upskill as well in terms of moving forward with what you'd like to do with your art?
Well, coding languages. So yeah, about that, this is I actually started with, I think, processing as talking about creative coding languages, right? Because I've coded some. I learned some coding in C, C++, and Turbo Pascal. Even Turbo Pascal was my first one. This is like long gone. I guess it's no longer used anywhere. So yeah, I started with P5, and if anybody is looking into to exploring it, I think P5.js is probably one of the easiest and pretty well documented. A lot of resources to learn. And I think it's actually really good for a wide array of artworks. Sometimes, for example, what Andrea does, well, you don't need P5 for that, basically. So that's a WebGL thing. This is very mathematical, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, how certain things work, and I always need to remember that when you're coding shaders, you need to think not as, I mean, just differently, completely differently, right? There's not one person, there are hundreds of people doing the same thing, and so on and so on. It's really, really fun. Well, there's also like Three.js, which is very complex language. I mean, you can do a lot. You can do 3D. It's called Three.js because of 3D space that is available there and the tools to manipulate and organize this space. But it allows for much more. It's also very convenient, but definitely more advanced, and I would say a bit harder than for example, P5. And of course, since we're on ordinals, there's also always way to go full vanilla, so just simple JavaScript, no libraries. And whenever I can, whenever I don't use 3D, I really enjoy going with just vanilla and not relying on any external libraries.
Yeah, and Andrea, what about for yourself? I noticed that you posted the other day about self-contained code, and obviously there's libraries that have been inscribed onto Bitcoin by On-Chain Monkey, and now FIFO from Wizards of Ord has put some libraries, and I'm sure that there are others. And then Pawel, I read in your docs that a coder could, inscribe their own, I don't know if you mentioned library or code base, that they can then, refer to and use recursion to create various outputs. But yeah, Andrea, what about for yourself? I know you mentioned before, and Pawel just said WebGL, you create using shaderism. Talk to us about, your preferred libraries or skill sets or self-contained code or any of your thoughts.
Well, leaving out the beginning, because I had to spoke about all the languages that I used in the past, basic, Fortran, Pascal, C++, Python, but for this particular, for the things we are talking about, what I use is similar to what said Pawel. I started the first generative art released was using P5, and P5. Then, as I said before, to have a more realistic representation for my landscapes works, I started to learn and to use Three.js. Because I could have a really complex scene with light, shadows, all the things that make something more realistic, we can say. And then passing to release works for ordinals on Bitcoin. As Pawel, I used only JavaScript with WebGL. JavaScript with shader called with the shader for the most complex part of the work, for which you need the power of the GPU. When you the shader JavaScript load the shader, build, compile them, and let run directly in the GPU. As said Pawel, you have to shift completely the way in which you think at code, in which you think you have something in your head, and you want that something is an output of the program you write. With traditional language, you have for loop. You have proceed in a serial manner, we can say. But in a shader, when you write a single line, that single line applies parallel to all the pixels in the screen, a single instruction. And so you have a really compact code, but especially at this, when you begin to study this, it's something difficult to understand. I remember at the starting, I was able to do something that I like, but I don't understand why. What I wrote produced that things on the screen. And now I understand better after studying more, after practicing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was curious about the process of like when you do write some code, are you certain of what you're about to see when you go and test it, or is there still that element of surprise?
Sorry, can you repeat?
When you said now you're certain of what you're going to see when you write that line of code, but it must have been interesting when it was more of a surprise.
When I say that single line of code can produce can change all pixels on the screen in a single instruction.
Yeah, talk to us about that.
Yes, in shader language, you have two kind of shader shader program. The vertex shader that it applies to all vertex on the screen if you are working with the 3D in more geometric way. And the fragment shader is what used more, and that applies to the pixel. You can create. So in my approach, I have a single vertex shader that only draw a rectangle on screen that is the screen. And then the fragment shader can manipulate each pixel. And the most useful, beautiful algorithm for this, for me at least, is the possibility to have a 3D world only applying some rules, some line of code to all the pixels in the screen with the algorithm called RalenArc, in which you describe your object in the scene as a mathematical function. You have to describe all this a sphere, a cube, a cylinder with the mathematical equation that gives you the distance from the point of view. So you are able to create 3D world in I don't know, 10 lines of code. Also, this is something for the same thing I said before that really fascinates me. And most of the last works that I released also on Gamma are based on this algorithm of RalenArc with signed distance function.
Interesting. Yeah, and a little pat on the back. I spoke to Casey Rodamore, who essentially invented ordinals in Miami, and he was a big fan of yours, Andrea. Ralen, similarly, yeah, talk to us about languages. Do you have preferred ones? Are you constantly exploring others? You know, how do you see your work evolving?
I've been using mainly P5, so JavaScript, and that's what I'm mainly using for my artwork. So I have been exploring so many new techniques with these. I feel like there are so many possibilities to create such a unique patterns and texture with this library. So I really like using this to create my artwork. And yeah, I use so many techniques like putting depth and using gradient effects and different type of textures. Um, I rotate different lines to like on the background, foreground. So like that, I'm using different techniques.
And is it what, for example, you know, let's go back to Matrix. You obviously had a vision for that. Do you then like reference the library and code and then evolve and adapt and kind of see what you like and then go from there? And I know that obviously we're going to talk about this with any long form gen art. There's variables that affect the outputs, but obviously on Bitcoin it can be a little bit different. Do you have an idea of what the set's going to look like, or does it still surprise you?
No, actually, I had idea what I'm going to create. So that's why, so before that, I made the static output, and then I thought like, okay, if I do animated it, like how it will look. And that's why that my idea came in my mind, and I did like animated version of it. And I really amazed like to seeing different type of animations in that project.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's almost. Do you find that you have a style or a thread that sort of is cohesive across what you create, or does it differ, or is it like, you know, certain illustrators might illustrate in a certain style? Do you feel like you then code in a certain style?
So actually, mine in my style, I use different textures, colors, and pattern. That is really inspired from like my physical world, also like physical art and different mediums. So where like there also you can see in my I posted some my physical work there. So there are also you can see different kind of textures and different type of patterns, and the same way I do here also. So yeah, like texture, patterns, and mostly the colors.
Yeah, you can really see that when you explore your body of work. And it's great to see Stoic Killer Hero as a collector. It's so refreshing and amazing to hear how their favorite piece of art were created. Because I was commenting on that before. It's interesting, particularly with generative art, it's still quite a foreign concept or idea for your, you know, the average person. So yeah, appreciate you three being here, diving into it. And Stoic, thanks for tuning in and throwing that comment in. If you are watching and you've got any questions, please do. So Pawel, I know that you've played with different endpoints that are available on Bitcoin to create, you know, I know that there's that piece that changes depending on fee rate. Obviously there's inscription IDs that can change colors or other variables. There's other endpoints too. I'd love for you to comment on, because I know that that's unique to creating on Bitcoin. But a lot of people don't know. Well, that's an exaggeration. There are people who don't realize that generative art has been around, and fully on-chain generative art has been around on ETH, for example. And I know that you've created on Artblocks, which was fully on-chain on ETH. Talk to us about the similarities in your approach or what you need to do, but then also the differences, or where, you know, for both chains and the way you might create.
Well, okay. So first of all, just to clear things up, art blocks are somewhat on chain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
So apparently, if you want to go like fully with the scale of being on-chain. Art blocks are somewhere. I don't know actually. However, I know that the code is preserved, because then we have also collections that are actually fully on-chain, that are inscribed in all metadata, every single piece, everything is on the blockchain. Then we have, even like on ETH, then we have like a higher level that we can, where artists actually use smart contracts to do something, to perform some action. Like, for example, if you don't send your artwork, it will die after some time. I don't remember the name of this project. If anybody knows, just please type in the chat, because I'm looking for this for 2 years now. There was a project that you needed to send to someone after a certain time, otherwise artwork dies. So you had a choice, either you want to keep it but keep it dead, right, or lose it but keep it alive. A very interesting question. I mean, this is what's amazing. And well, basically this kind of creating art is what attracts me the most, because you can introduce a lot of interaction, and this is not a local interaction. This is not interaction with few people in the room, but everybody, every single person in the world can play, can join the game or the experience, right? So on Bitcoin, we don't have smart contracts, but luckily we have endpoints, recursive endpoints, that give us access to blockchain data. And this is also a very, very, I mean, this is like a great tool for me personally. I love it. Because, for example, using on-chain data or using data, more maybe not on-chain data, but like chain data on Ethereum needs, you need to know smart contracts coding for that, most probably. But on Bitcoin, using endpoints is fairly easy. I mean, technically, this is just fetching data from endpoint. This is open ChatGPT, it can explain it in a minute. But what are you going to do with this data? This is like the interesting part, because we have the height of the block. We can actually, we have the inscriptions. We know that the inscription can be self-aware. The inscription can know about itself. So previously it knew its number, right? But with, I don't know which one, update to ORD, it can now know its height. It can know I think the most recent transaction. By height, I mean when it was created. This is like so amazing. This is how I created Grailstone, because you can count time from the birth, and for me it was so cool that it doesn't have to be minted all at once. I mean, with long-form projects, when everybody mints on their own, this element will just be different for every single artwork, right? So yeah, I don't know what else. I think that's it.
No, that's really interesting, and you have really explored the possibilities there. Do you think differently compared to when you were creating on ETH, or is it, do you still find that you have a similar like vision and process, or has that changed dramatically since you've been creating on Bitcoin?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, my skills definitely changed a lot. I think even if you compare my race to the most recent artworks, style of coding changed. I mean, my code is minified usually, so it's hard to read it. But yeah, I definitely code now in a bit different way. But I also think in a different way. I'm thinking about what's possible, what's native. I really like to think about the medium that I'm using. So in this case, when I'm using Bitcoin blockchain, I want to be connected to it and utilize it. Maybe think as you were, use the medium on purpose, right? It can mean a lot of things. For someone, it can be immutability. For me, it's just the way Bitcoin works and the way the way it's organized.
Yeah, I agree. It's really well expressed. And one more before we jump across to Andrea, is it purposeful to minify the code so it's hard to read? Is it kind of like a proprietary sort of protective thing, or is it just the way you like to code? And I know, it's to each their own, really. I know some generative artists will just have their code available. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
That's
all right. We'll go to Andrea. Yeah.
What's for me? The question. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. I always was favorable to open the source, and I minify the code for a necessity to have something more compact. But I have no problem if some other people, other artists take my code and modify it and produce something new from it. Sure, I don't like if someone take the code and use as it is, but if it's used as a starting point from some other thing, I can be only happy for this. We all use something in a way or another. We are all copying from someone that comes before us. The most important algorithm were written in I think in 16, 17. I don't say that informatics is stopped at that year, but the fundamental algorithm, we can say searching, sorting, some we are not even so conscious when we use, but we use something that is also already formulated by someone before for us, for sure. And so if someone in learning, as I said before, I learned how to use ray matching to realize 3D rendering realistic or less realistic. This is the good thing. You can decide this. But sorry for the parenthesis. To learn this, I studied what brought Inigo Quilets. We can say the shader master. He knows all about all we do in some way or another. If I look I think I find it in his code, in his tutorials, in his he has a site, a website in which explain all these things, and so you read, learn, and in some way or another you don't copy, but in some way or another you are using his works.
Yeah.
So this is a good thing. This is a way of sharing knowledge.
100%, and it's very it feels like a provocative question, but there's that provocative comment that Picasso said that good artists copy and great artists steal. It's not necessarily stealing, but everything is an adaptation or I guess like an evolution on something else, and that's across literature and science and art and everything. Ralen, what about yourself? I know that I remember you chatting with Jack, one of our engineers who is a guru and helps out a lot behind the scenes with all the gen artists and other sort of tech requirements for artists on Bitcoin. But Ralen, I know that you like to keep things like in a single line of code, I recall you writing, or you like to sort of have it as small as possible, which obviously is great because it reduces the size of the inscription that you need to put on chain. But I suppose that's like also like a personal choice of yours.
Yes, actually, I like to keep my code in one line. So yeah, I was discussing with him, and he was asking, "Can I ask you why?" Then I said, "I like it." So yeah, and yeah, I also do minify my code because the same reason, like someone when like see and they just take it out and they can put there. So because everyone is doing a lot of experience, like experiment with the code, and then it's kind of our own style, I would say. So I don't want like anyone can take and just put it there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think that there's no right answer or wrong answer. In the end, it's personal choice, and the artist, the creative coder, whoever should be able to make that decision. Pawel, it's great. I love your background because we can see, aspects of what you create. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I can see like playing with light. It's almost a little bit ethereal. And obviously the grail stone on the bottom right-hand corner, you still get that the sculpting, like that 3D sculpting, like what you used to do. But yeah, we're beyond the sort of more technical aspects. Where does that inspiration come from? Is light and maybe something cellular or something galactic? Again, I don't want to. That's my interpretation. It may or may not be what you're thinking when you get going. But yeah, where do you think that comes from? Just in terms of like what you're trying to create, or what I guess speaks to you when you are happy with outputs.
So basically, light is a very, I would say, popular and topic in art, especially. Well, I said before that photography was my first artistic love, right? I love everything about photography. I love taking photos. I love the chemical process. I love digital process. I love lenses. I love cameras. I love everything about it. I love intercepting images in general. Either if they are photographs, so you plan to actually make take picture of someone, or if they are technical images, so I don't know, scanning everything. I just love all kinds of images, and well, somehow our history as humanity happened that the light is the bearer of the image. I mean, we learned the first images, of course, they were paints, but then the technical images started with capturing light, right? So we were capturing light to in photography than in multiple other scientific endeavors. I have a feeling like you want to say something. No. Okay. So yeah, this is like one aspect of light. So this is connected to technical images. Another aspect of light is that it's always mysterious. It's always magical. It always adds something. It can build everything or ruin everything, right? On so many levels. This metaphor, you can go on with it. But then interesting fact is that I'm like exploring a completely new, well, not anymore, it's been 4 years, right? But I moved from like this sculpting, this physical thing, back to visual arts, and I felt a lot like I was a student. And when you're a student at I don't know, you're learning drawing or painting or something, what's the earliest task? Like learn drawing lights and shadows. That's it. So yeah, I felt like it all clicked again. that this light, yeah, it's just it carries various messages for me.
Yeah, I love that. You did mention the photography, and it's, yeah, and I couldn't help myself. You just said it just clicked, and I'm like, well, that's another camera pun in some of what you were in some of what you were saying. But yeah, no, and again, I don't mean for this, but I'm going to say it sort of really shines through in your explanation there. So yeah, fascinating stuff. And Andrea, you referred to it earlier, your Twitter handle and across other various social media. I think you said your handle is water flowing, and there is that very flowy movement like aspect to your work. You also play with the ability to manipulate the work and move it around. What's the piece that Casey said looked like the burners on a stove, which I thought was a funny interpretation, but you can kind of enter that. But yeah, where does that for lack of a better word, inspiration or kind of exploration come, in your work?
Yes, yes. You are maybe you are talking about H plus H equal
Yes.
HE plus energy. That was simplification of the equation that gives energy by fusion. That what happens in the sun and what we are we will realize the next I can say 20, 30, 40 years with a fusion reactor as a form of really clean energy, almost infinite energy, but it's a parenthesis. And in that work, I added I already have worked with interactivity, but in that work, the interactivity was part of the work because you navigate through this this world made of light explosion, or and you can navigate by mouse, by WASD, as if it were a video game. I like this aspect that it is possible to do using JavaScript and WebGL, and there are other works of mine that are interactive and related to what Pawel said before, relating to endpoints. Also, some of my works use endpoint, as for example in useless stone analyzer, in which you have the stone that has the same exact color as in a mempool, because with the endpoint I can know at each block the average fee, and the average fee is what gives the color on the. For that, I look at the code of the page of mempool that is open source, and I find some array that define the color and what color is attributed to what range of fit. So I read that I have the same exact color, and that is not interactivity, but it's something that change what you see that you have in front of you, related to what happens in the blockchain. This, as said before, Pawel is in paramount aspect of works released as Ordinance on blockchain, because you have the possibility to use this. In other words, I use simply the block hash. I teach code, I teach a new block, I take the block hash, I do something like a crossbreeding, like in Gene, between the inscription ID and the block hash to add a new seed for the pseudo-random number generator. So each work minted explore or in more time all the possibilities of the algorithm, each piece, and then the collection is made by many pieces. What else?
No, I was going to say it must be fun to know and to be able to play and make it so dynamic. Pawel, do you want to comment on that? Oh, Andrea, sorry, you got it?
Yes, the thing I like more is both things. The fact that the object in the scene, speaking in general and not on a particular works, the fact that the things has this smooth motion, this flows. This is one of the aspects. The other aspect that I like is the possibility to interact. So the collector has something that can manipulate, that can see by other point of view. It's not something static, but something moving by itself and moving by also by the user, the collector. I like
it took me a little while to realize that Mollis Orbis was able to be manipulated, and then it was very addictive to play with. Ralen, what about for yourself? What are some of the similarities and differences when you've created on ETH and then on Bitcoin, and how have you played with the variation aspect on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I started my NFT journey with the ETH. So I'd say the ETH is like based on like a smart contract or a platform based. So yeah, it's like if you have the choice, if you want to put your work on like on chain, you can do. Otherwise, if platform will that, your artwork is kind of dead. And Bitcoin, I started working on Bitcoin like early 2023. So one of my curator, and he's my collector also. He introduced me about the Bitcoin ordinals, and then I thought like it's very new for me. I don't know about like, so he explained me everything like, okay, we will help you on that. So that time I released Ariel with them, and then I became a Gamma partner, and then I released Matrix with you guys. So I really happy like my work is forever on chain. So I'm really happy about that. Like I do not need to care about like after some time or some years or decades. So that is a good thing for like on art on Bitcoin.
For sure, and it's the same, I suppose, yeah, with the fully on-chain art on it, generative art on ETH. Pawel, I'm curious. For example, let's talk about Grailstone. You would have done a lot of testing and checked how, I suppose, like off-chain or in the testnet environment, what certain variation is going to look like. And obviously, you can talk to us a little bit about how you even use the special sats as an endpoint to change how the Grailstone grew. Do you still get surprised by outcomes, or are you fair, or can you predict it? Like, that's something that I'm not super across. Like, if you obviously want to ensure that the code that you've written is going to be good for, you know, a certain number of, you know, supply, for example. Like, you want to know there's going to be great supply across 500 or great supply across 1,000 or things like that. How much testing do you do? And do you still see things where you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I didn't think or didn't know that was going to happen, or is it more predictable than that?
Okay, a few questions. So about
yeah, sorry, I get carried away.
About predictability. So basically, when I'm working on a collection or an algorithm, I need to think about the number of artworks, because I don't want the I want the artwork to represent the variety in the algorithm. How wide is it? Is every artwork to be unique and very different, or how different? How to manage this so it wasn't like every single piece is the same, right? Because if every single piece is the same, then why am I creating 100, not 10, for example, right? Or something like this. I'm not talking about editions, but because that's completely another topic. But I'm talking about generative art, where the differences like are minimal. That's for me. That's my approach. So yeah, when I'm working on an algorithm, I try to test as much as possible, of course. However, I'm working on a code right now that is surprising me every day, really. And every day I find a new bug, which is like a minor thing. And every day I see outputs that I haven't seen before yet. So this is I'm really happy with it. Really. Really happy with the variety, but yeah, I always try to make it work together. So, for example, I'm not sure if I would like to release, for example, 1,000 collection. It needs a lot of preparation to make it interesting. And so you asked about Grailstone, and the Grailstone was also pretty similar. So I tried to make the crystals unique, right? Because every time you're digging in the if you're a crystal hunter, or I don't know what's the proper name, so if you're hunting crystals and if you're digging, you probably will never find the two that are the same. So it was the same approach with Grailstone, which was on the one hand, it utilized the UTXO or the transaction ID, basically. So this is like the simple level of not the simple, like the most popular way of determining the artworks, the generative artworks, for the randomness. But on the other hand, I also use things like the block height. So when you minted, on which particular block it was minted, it was important. And of course, sats were important. So my code could recognize a few kinds of sats. So uncommons, because they are fairly easy to determine. Vintage, because they are fairly easy to determine. Palindromes, for the same reason. And alphas and omegas. All right, so basically all of the sats that I would call like mathematical sats, because well, you can't fake it, you can't add more of them or something like this. There are just rules that I coded, and then Grailstone recognized this piece of sats. It didn't recognize like cultural sats. So, for example, pizzas, Hitman, Silk Road, etc., etc. Yeah, and well, if collectors decided to find the rare sats and utilize it, they could benefit a huge bonus in the growing journey of their crystal.
Yeah, and I rushed. So I was so excited, and I just rushed and inscribed it, minted it straight away, and forgot a special set. However, it's still gorgeous, and it's almost nice in its simplicity. So I think that there's something for everybody. Andrea, what are you working on right now?
Good question. I'm working. I have a work. I have something that I working on for to arrive at a long form collection. But this is one of my negative aspect. When I work at something, I go forward. I go forward. Like if I never was satisfied, and some on past works, something I have the feeling that if I had stopped at step n-1 and -2, I had a better result. This is, as I said, a negative aspect. So I'm working on something, but during this development, I am exploring lateral ways. I'm not satisfied. It's a work that I also talked about with Pawel. We talk about each other. Frequently, I ask for help to him, and sometimes the reciprocal. And this something in which I have this idea. The screen is divided in a grid in cell, and in each cell happens the same things, but at with different flow in time, with different flows of the time. So moving from top left to right bottom, we have something that go with all different phases of different velocities. And this makes the effect that is all different, but it's the same thing. But as if I could see the same thing at different time speed. This create something these different phases, these different velocities in time create some, we could say, emergent harmonic motion. Is an idea that I have in mind by many times, by a lot of time, because it's something that relates to what I would like, that if it is something that relates to what Steve Reich, I don't know if you know Steve Reich, is a musician, compositor, modern compositor that made this experiment with phase. The same piece of music played by two artists with different time. At the time he worked with tapes, taped reel, and different speed, and so a simple melody, so superimposed with the one at different velocities, starting together. Then it's like they shift one on another, and creates new sound. You have the feelings that are entering new instrument, new sound, but it's same. It always the same piece. It's if you want to hear, search for this name. One of the most famous pieces is Violin Phase, and so I had this idea to express this concept with my style, with my visual way of coding. And I'm also, this is what I want to do as a next work. And I also learning some more shell programming to have some effect with things like cellular automata or reaction diffusion, something that is used to simulate physical phenomena, but that gives rise to create complexity, to emergent properties. A little test of this is in chemical reactions on gamma. But I would like to explore this more in a more expressivity, more complex. With that, something that reveals the fact that from simple use you have a great complexity of object that creates, interacts, but are not programmed. You only program the single rule on each single cell, and then arise something new.
Sounds really
this two way. So a lot of work to do to have something releasable.
It sounds exciting though. I can't wait to see the first taste of that, Andrea. Ralen, I know you just sold out a collection, so it might feel a little bit premature, but I know that a lot of artists have always got something simmering, something on the stove just simmering along, even whilst they've got a collection out. Does that apply to you, or do you sort of work from one project to another, or do you have different fires kind of going at the same time?
Yeah, like it's depend, like so many time I work like different project together, and sometimes one project take a lot of time, like a lot of iterations, and like when I feel like I'm satisfied with my artwork, I release that. Otherwise, I work on that until I'm not satisfied. So yeah, and yeah, I'm working on different project now. So yeah, definitely I will share more details in few days. And I really love your Pawel, your work, and Andrea, like what you are sharing. It's amazing. Like I'm following you from like long time, and really love your both of your work.
Yeah, well, all three of you.
Sorry, Brad.
No, go for it. Please go for it.
No, I have to move in another room because this place is needed by another person in this house. I exit and re-enter in
Well, let's wrap up
half
here.
a minute.
Let's wrap up here. I think that it's been. I know that it's very late for Pawel. We've been going for 90 minutes. It's been a wonderful chat. Thank you to all three of you for being here and sharing, in more detail your process, the way you think, the different ways in which you create, and how it happens, and sort of bringing what's very technical for the person who doesn't understand it to be understood. And so when we see what you create and love those outputs, we have a little bit more understanding of where they started and why they started. So Pawel and Andrea and RalenArc, thank you so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure to jump onto this live stream with you.
Thanks a lot, Brad. Thanks a lot, Andrea, Ralen. Happy to meet you, and happy to learn more about you.
Thank you, Brad, Pawel and Andrea and Gamma team. I really amazed. Like it's very amazing team, I would say.
No, well, we can't.
Thank you, Pawel. Thank you, Ralen. I was really happy to be here. Also, as I always say, it is for me, as you are listening, it's difficult to speak in English, but mainly because I never speak English. So,
Your English is very good, honestly, Andrea.
Oh.
You spoke coherently.
And you are too kind.
No, well, and also thank you to everyone who tuned in. We had, in the end, almost 800 people tune in, which is quite amazing. And yeah, real pleasure. And we, onwards and upwards. And we can't do what we do at Gamma without incredible creators like you and the creators who are watching and the collectors who are watching. So thank you to all involved. Have a great evening or afternoon or morning or wherever you are. And yeah, peace. Thanks, guys.